Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. When you think about what's going on in boxing, and it's not just Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, but the two of them and the rant on Twitter kind of brought a lot of things to light, in my opinion. And now that those things have kind of surfaced, it kind of shows you what, I'm not saying I agree with him on everything he says, but I think there's some truth to boxing business model being broken and in some kind of trouble. Now, I'm not saying Dana White and the UFC has it correct, okay? But it's, of course, the guys at the top in the UFC make a whole lot more money than I would say, for the most part, guys at the top in boxing. But the guys at the top in boxing, they take their cut. But over at the UFC, their guys are really at the top of making money hand over fist. Also at the UFC, they have a large stable of fighters. These guys have fighters from all over the world. And with the amount of fighters they have, I did a video on this several months ago. It's impossible for the UFC to have enough fights so everyone gets a chance to fight the minimum contracted amount of fights, right? As a result, if they can't fight that minimum amount of fights, they can't get paid. And that's the problem with the UFC. But it seems to me that at least they're not really showing much favoritism to their fighters as far as how much money they pay, because unless you're a super draw, a super big name, they're not really trying to talk to you about anything. It's more of a take it or leave it situation. And then you look at the fight person in the fight card, they're pretty comparable. The bottom tier, he's pretty low, but when you look at as it starts to go up, incrementally, you're not seeing a jump from like a guy making 5,000 to someone making 40 million. Okay, and that's sometimes what you see in boxing. But there was an article I came across, and I thought it was interesting. And it goes on to say a few things, right? If you wonder why boxing shrinks in prominence week after week, month after month, year after year, and sadly, decade after decade, head over to Twitter, which I just talked about, and check out the thread between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford that took place on Wednesday. The two unbeaten welterweight champions bickered like spoiled children over why they chose not to fight each other. Yes, it was a choice. Crawford and his backers have blamed Spence, and vehemently so. Spence's backers just as adamantly have laid the blame upon Crawford. True, finger pointing, blaming, airing a lot of people's personal business, which, to me, I think is a foul. But that's what happens sometimes when people start to argue and emotions get involved. They say things they otherwise wouldn't have said. Of course, instead of bickering over who would win what should be a fantastic fight, their fans are arguing about something they don't have a clue about. And I always say this, no one knows what's going on except for that fly on the wall when conversations are taking place. All we can go off of the little bit of information that they share with us, and we don't even know if that's factual. But sometimes we try to, put on detective hats and piece together the little bit of information that we have to kind of come up with a kind of clearer picture, or as clear as we can get it, onto what may have transpired or prevented a fight from happening. Okay, and in this case, I think the picture that kind of is being painted by both sides is a money issue. Which side's at fault? I mean, nobody really knows, but that's what it seems to be. So it goes on to say that the fans have no idea what the truth is in the matter. They don't understand the business, and yet they fill social media with these rants instead of discussing the actual fight. That, in a nutshell, is boxing in 2022. Here's why the fight hasn't been made. Exclusivity and expectations. Crawford for years was with Top Rank, which has an exclusive television deal with ESPN. Spence is with PBC, which has its TV deal with Showtime. Top Rank vastly overpaid Crawford. Now this is the shit here that I don't like hearing about, but it is what it is, okay? And PBC overpaid Spence. Now, I've never heard that, okay? Now they're saying Spence was overpaid, but it is what it is. Top Rank lost millions on Crawford versus Sean Porter. It sold a small amount of tickets and tanked on pay-per-view, but Crawford walked away with a cool $6 million. So that could, okay, so you can understand why Bob Arum was pissed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't say how much. See, this is what, if you're going to write an article, right, give all the specifics. All it says is Top Rank overpaid Crawford, PBC overpaid Spence, Top Rank lost millions on Crawford versus Sean Porter. So a small amount of tickets and Crawford got paid $6 million. Okay, what did he lose? How did they lose the money? Okay, I already did a video talking about projections. Was that, did they lose millions on what they projected to make, but they still made a profit? Or did they actually go in the red and he had to pull out of his pocket? See, if you projected to make, let's say in this number, right? Say they projected to make $10 million, okay? And you had to pay Crawford $6 million. That's a $4 million profit. But if they say they only made $7 million and they had to give Crawford $6 million of that, means a $1 million profit. So yeah, they lost $3 million based on what they projected, but they still weren't agreed $1 million. But you know, the way it's written, the first thing you want to say is, oh, they basically took money out of their pocket, stuff they didn't plan for, stuff that wasn't part of a budget. It's money that was sitting in a pot that wasn't supposed to be touched, and they had to pull from that pot and pay Crawford. See, that's how, I think the first thought a person goes towards. But to me, they don't really expound, okay? And that's what I think is important here is, everyone keeps talking about transparency, right? Some transparency. If you're going to make a statement like this in an article, at least be transparent. And they're not. To me, they're not, okay? People thought that once Crawford broke from Top Rank, it would be simple to make the fight with Spence. But that's where the expectations come in. Because both fighters were overpaid, now they find themselves in a situation where they expect to fight each other for an enormous payday that would cause massive financial losses to anyone who funded it. Okay, I get it with Crawford. Maybe they were pulling from a pot of money that shouldn't have been touched to pay him because there was a contractual agreement, okay? I get that, all right? I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying I can wrap my head around a person saying Crawford was overpaid. But I can't wrap my head around anyone saying Spence was overpaid. Because Al Heyman and Showtime and nobody said anything about them losing money on Spence. Now, the guy in this article, is he just saying because Spence has made so much money that he's making the kind of money he didn't deserve? And as a result, we're going to go ahead and just say, hey, he's being overpaid. Not that PBC and Showtime took a loss, but they're just giving him way too much money. And now he's been spoiled, he's been overpaid, although they made profits, and now he wants a ridiculous amount of money. You see? And that's my thing. But they're just going to lump, when they make this broad brush statement of boxers being overpaid, Crawford and Spence both overpaid, almost putting them in the same category, but not peeling the layers back for us. So a person who can't critically analyze things and they just read it and take it for what it's worth, they're not going to get into the weeds on it, and they're just going to say, oh, wow, Spence and Crawford both have been overpaid. Damn, Al Heyman and PBC going broke because, you know, they're hemorrhaging money to pay for Spence's fights as well. That's not what this article's saying. And that's why I said they need to be more transparent. And if you're going to make a statement that Spence has been overpaid, well, then say how. You know, don't just come out and throw some random broad brush statement out there and cause people to draw their own conclusion, because that's what people are going to do. And what it's going to do is cause people to do the same thing this article is complaining about. People to talk about and assume things that they have no idea. So it is what it is. But talking about overpaying and funding a fight where you could take a big loss, says it makes the sport look ridiculous and decidedly low rent. There is no central authority. a commissioner's office, let's say. And so boxing has no rules, no sense of sport, no order or fair play. It's every man and woman for himself or herself. Nobody in a position of authority lifts a finger to fix it because they can suck some money out of it. Some are smarter than others and squeeze out a bit more, but the business is on life support. An obscenely small amount of fighters make the overwhelming majority of money in boxing, while a huge number make next to nothing. There is no middle class, and so there's increasingly less incentive for athletes to take up boxing because the odds of them hitting it and making the big money are in the range of those against you or I hitting the Powerball. And this is what Dana White talks about. He say he'll never pay his guys the kind of money guys get paid in boxing. He talks about their business model, their pay structure, and how everybody makes very good money. I don't know. That's just what he says. But we do know for a fact, and they give an example here, the pay structure in boxing can be a little bugged out, right? Take, for example, the card in Los Angeles on September 4th that was headlined by heavyweights Andy Ruiz and Luis Ortiz. Ruiz made $1 million and Ortiz earned $550,000. Of the 16 fighters who competed that night, 8 made $5,500 or less. So half the fighters made $5,500 or less. Antonio Lopez and Juan Carlos Lopez earned $5,500 each. Anthony Cuba, Oscar Perez, Anthony Garnica, and Jesus Carrillo each made $5,000. Matt Gaver and Kel Spencer earned $4,000, and Del Geno Revello made $2,000. $2,000, man. After Revello paid his debts, now this is the guy who made $2,000, such as his manager, trainer, cutman, license, drug testing, etc. He was lucky if he can afford a medium pan pizza with pepperoni and extra cheese and a 2-liter bottle of soda. Yeah, $2,000 doesn't go far, man. There's no way a boxer can make a living earning $2,000 or $4,000 a fight. And so who knows how many potential champions walk away and give up because they have a spouse and a child to take care of and rent to pay. They're ground up by a system that does nothing but replenish itself. Tonight when I was at my, all three of my boys are playing basketball, right? In these AAU leagues. And I'm sitting there and I have a friend. He has 4 kids that are playing for the same organization. He's from Nigeria. He was an ex-professional boxer. He had over 238 amateur fights. I'm not going to say his name on here. We were talking tonight, and I asked him. I said, yo, why'd you stop boxing? And he told me, and he sparred Andy Ruiz, okay? He sparred Andy Ruiz before to get Ruiz some training. Years ago, he told me. So he said they know him and he knows them. And he told me Andy Ruiz's dad is very disciplined. He said he's a short guy. He's like, but his dad's very disciplined. And they were good people, a good family. Okay, we just talked about this tonight. And what he told me was the reason why he stopped boxing is like coming from Africa, training the Nigerian boxers for the Olympics, the Nigerian team and all that, having a wife and kids. But he said what happened, he said that played into it too. But he said he was training and he would fight, get a knockout, fight, get a knockout. And then it got to a point to where he would be training for fights. And they'd have a fight date, and then he'd go to the fight, and sometimes the fighters wouldn't show up. Or he would get there and the fighter didn't want to fight. And he told me he just got tired of that because for 3 years, he said he trained. And they have multiple fights scheduled. And fights would just fall apart. So he said what would happen is he would get to some places and he'd be in the dressing room, and they would give him his check or his cash. They put that in the pocket, and then they would tell him he said for that 3-year span, the guys they weren't showing up. And what he told me, he's like, there's a lot of politics in boxing, a lot of politics. And he was like, for him, it was just hard for his manager. He said he was signed to a very popular manager out there in the Los Angeles area. And he said he had 2 different managers he was signed to at a time. One, he wasn't getting into fight, so he signed with another one who was a big name manager. And he said, the guy just told him, man, nobody wants to fight you. And they didn't want to fight him because he was, he had over 230 something amateur fights, and he was good and a southpaw. And he said he just got tired. And he said, he was in Maryland. When he was in Maryland, he was getting ready. They flew him there to have a fight, a last-minute replacement, and they got him there as the last-minute replacement. And when he was in the locker room, the guy decided not to fight him. And he said that's when he quit. He said he just can't do it. And then he said while he was there, he went to the club. And while he was at the club that night, his manager called him again and said, hey, we got a fight for you, but you got to go to San Francisco. You got to leave tomorrow. Do you want it? And he said he didn't want to take it, but he took it because he felt like he'd walk into the same situation. So he said he went to San Francisco. The guy showed up. He knocked the guy out in the first round. And he said after that he never fought again because it's the same thing. And I know, and I think you guys also have an idea, even though you may not have done it and I haven't fought professionally, but training, could you imagine training, getting ready for a fight, no fight? Even though they give you a check. Training, get ready for a fight, no fight. Training, get ready for a fight, no fight for over 3 years. So anyway, one thing I asked him, I said, so do you get paid? And he was like, yeah. He's like, once you go, before you go out to the ring, they give you a check, so you get paid before you go into the ring. He's like, so every time I went there, I got my money, even if the guy didn't show up. And he just got tired of that. So that being said, when you talk about guys trying to earn a living, my man had to go and figure something else out. So he coached for the Nigerian team for a while. Was making good money doing that. But now, they're here, they live out here by me, and everything's going pretty good for him and his family. But back to this $2,000 and $4,000 a fight. It's hard, man, if a guy has to take care of the children, family, pay a mortgage, pay rent. It's horrible because the system in boxing, it just doesn't replenish itself. Once you go and fight, that's it. You know what I'm saying? So when you think about those fighters who are making $2,000 or $4,000 a fight, and they're really not left with anything after they pay everybody, that sucks. Meanwhile, Crawford and Spence made themselves look foolish, arguing over $25 million purse guarantees, hedge funds, and who has a boss and other nonsense that has nothing whatsoever to do with the fights. That simply further alienates the sport from its fans, and mostly from its potential fans. And that's why right now, the diehards will buy this Crawford fight on this BLK platform, but the majority of people, they're not buying that shit. Nobody, we want to see Crawford fight, okay? But man, we want to see him fight Spence. That's where it's like you're starving, right? And you finally get somebody to, hey, you all right? Nah, man, I'm hungry. Tongue hanging out my mouth. Man, I need something to eat. Man, I'm going to bring you a steak. Hell yeah. Just wait right here. Cool, no problem. I'm already dying. I ain't going anywhere. And matter of fact, bring me some alkaline water. Yeah, I got you. And then they finally get around to your ass, and instead of bringing you a steak and alkaline water, they bring your ass a damn quesadilla and nothing to drink and leave you there eating that shit. A cheese quesadilla at that. So now you dry mouth, gassed up, and miserable. So if that person comes back around and offers you something again, you're like, man, keep that shit. I'd rather just die of hunger and starvation. Because that's not what I want. We want the steak. We want the curry goat. You know what I'm saying? That's what we want. We don't want no damn dry-ass cheese quesadilla. You can't even give me a beverage with that, man? And that's what's happening here, man. It's crazy. So there are no rules in boxing and fewer barriers to entry. Even in the NHL, where at one point, they got these guys who talk about people not having enough money required to complete transactions in hockey. They still approve these guys to purchase a franchise. And there are policies in place to enforce minimum standards in other sports. And in boxing, they said there really is none. So it is what it is. Because boxing, man, let me tell you, too many fighters aren't put together, and also in fights because of their TV deals and lack of overriding authority, and the lack of rules to regulate how those who do find a way into it operate, man. And that's true. I mean, and that's why you see all the PBC fighters fighting each other, all the Top Rank fighting each other, all the Golden Boy fighting each other. All these different promoting outfits, they can sit there if they have enough fighters in the same weight division and just, have them fight each other and do what they want. And, and that sucks because, it just occurs on nearly a daily basis in boxing. And that just would shake the pillars of these major team sports to their cores. Can you imagine if, like in football or baseball, these guys would have to fragmented all that up into about like 4 or 5 teams and different, like create their own little kind of promotional outfits underneath baseball or underneath football, where only the 3, 4, 5 teams play against each other over and over. That shit can't work. And that's why here when we see guys fighting 2, 3, 4 times instead of everybody mixing it up and us not getting the fights we want, because there really is no overriding authority to make sure that happens. I mean, I guess you could say these sanctioning bodies they could be that, but they're not on the same playing field because they all are about, their fights being defended and them getting paid sanctioning fees. So it's like this article said, everybody just kind of out for self, man, and it is what it is. But exclusivity simply prevents a huge number of potentially good fights from occurring, man. It is what it is. In the U.S., there are 3 main broadcast outlets for boxing. ESPN, which has an exclusive deal with Top Rank. Showtime, which primarily does business with PBC, and DAZN, which does business primarily with Matchroom and Golden Boy. There are no viable options for other promoters to get their shows televised, and without TV, they're dead. That's true, and that sucks. A dispute over which network should televise an interesting fight between Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis has that bout on life support. Showtime has Davis, who is with PBC, and DAZN has Garcia, who's with Golden Boy. The NFL has broadcast deals with CBS, Fox, NBC, ESPN, and Amazon, and no game is ever not scheduled or held as a direct result of them, as happens far too often in boxing. Yeah, man, that's interesting, isn't it? Jimmy Cannon once referred to boxing as the red light district of sports, but even that terrific observation doesn't go far enough, because if you go to one of the places in Nevada where prostitution is legal, you find there are plenty of rules and regulations that govern the operation of the brothels. Boxing, not so much. So it sounds like there needs to be a better, or some kind of overriding authority with some rules and regulations. That way we can get all these fights we want. But, they're going to push back on that. Many fighters have been led to believe getting one's fight onto pay-per-view is reaching the promised land because of the success primarily of Floyd Mayweather, Mike Tyson, Manny Pacquiao, and a small handful of others in pay-per-view fights. Now, we know pay-per-view isn't necessarily the answer these days. Too often the fight goes to pay-per-view because no TV network wants to fund and broadcast it. That's why Showtime is doing all this pay-per-view stuff, because they don't have the money to pay people. That's how even a quality bout like the one on November 26th in Carson, California for the vacant WBC super lightweight title between Regis Prograis and Jose Zepeda ends up on pay-per-view. It's being sold for a ridiculously high $59.99 and has zero chance of getting anywhere near 100,000 sales. Even though it's a fun, top-to-bottom card, both Prograis and Zepeda are excellent fighters who are exciting to watch, but neither has a high profile and Phil will shell out $60 to watch it. Yo, man, that's crazy. They're trying to sell, man, Regis Prograis doing a pay-per-view, $60? Are you kidding me, man? Look, and I'm a diehard boxing fan, and I'm complaining. That's ridiculous, man. The sport of boxing is fantastic and at times awe-inspiring when you see the courage, bravery, and desire these athletes display. But the business of boxing is wretched. It's a broken system with too many scoundrels Eddie Hearn, to count and no organization in place that would help make the fight the public wants to see. The public is turning away and the business is going to keep shrinking because there's no one who cares enough about the sport and the business as a whole to do anything about it. The sad reality is boxing's demise is self-inflicted and no one seems inclined to try to figure out a way to solve its many problems. So that's the article, man. Yeah, out of all that, this has been going on for years, right? It's not really, I don't know what they can do, but it would take, I really don't know what they can do because you think about it. If boxing was governed how the NHL, Major League Baseball, football, right? Like all these other professional organizations, right? Sports. If it was governed like that, we would see some serious fights, but it's not. It's not. So fighters are just being pimped, man. And these guys get to an elite level, they start to make real money. But like the friend of mine I have, right? Guys like him never get an opportunity. And you think about it, when you hear some of these guys, these boxers out here right now, up and coming or well established, having 100 and something amateur bouts. Like Zab Judah, I don't even think he had 100 amateur bouts. But when you start hearing these guys have 200 something amateur bouts, I think Hellenius had like 200 and something, right? And my boy had like 238, right? And most of those were wins, okay? But when you think about that, 230 something amateur bouts, none of y'all know who he is. Nigerian fighter. Just don't get those opportunities, man. And the politics of boxing, look at Jake Paul. Now, I get it, he has a huge platform and everything. Look at where this man is at. No, nothing. Like when it comes to boxing, nothing. But because of his platform and everything, look where he is. Marcellus Wilder, because of his brother. And I'm not knocking it. What I'm saying is, you got a lot of boxers out there who are in boxing gyms who get busy, who are better than a lot of these professional fighters who are champions. They just never get that break. And Floyd Mayweather has talked about that, and other fighters have talked about that. These guys just never get that opportunity. They never get that big fight. And it's sad to see. But it's neither here nor there. I doubt anything's going to be done in the near future to fix anything. It's going to take all these sanctioning bodies and everyone else to come together and try to figure it out. But at the same time, they're going to be scared to make a change because Kinahan may come out here, man, and start round 2 with a killing spree with Claude and Ray. So it is what it is. But that being said, y'all keep cool. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. And as always, shout out to all 7 continents. Everyone supporting the channel. If you want to leave a donation, I'd appreciate it. Got the super thanks button out there now. Really appreciate it, man. The support, keeping things going. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.